Zdravo, Tong. Welcome to Dialogue Corner, a podcast hosted and produced by a group of young women from Belgrade and Pristina, alumni of the OSCE Dialogue Academy. In our podcast, we will try to bring different guests, such as prominent members of Serbian and Albanian societies and members of the international community, in order to share interesting stories and thoughtful insights. Also, we aspire to introduce our network to a larger audience and to create a community based on values of dialogue and gender equality, as well as share them not only with Albanian and Serbian communities, but throughout the entire region.
Hello and welcome to the Dialogue Corner podcast. My name is Katarina Cukovic and I am the alumna of the OSCE Dialogue Academy. And today I will be your host. In this episode, we will talk about the meme-ification of politics. We will talk about how memes influence the political communication and generally how memes can influence the general political discourse. And for this topic and this episode, we have one excellent guest, and that is Milos Moskovljevic. He's a young scholar currently residing in Hong Kong Special Administrative Region of the People's Republic of China, where he's pursuing a PhD in media and communication. Prior to that, he has attended Faculty of Political Sciences at the University of Belgrade, where he has obtained a bachelor and master's degree in political science with a specialization in public policy and governments. Furthermore, he had worked as a teaching assistant in undergraduate courses such as public policy and local self-governance. So welcome, Milos, and thank you for being our guest.
Hello, dear Katarina. Thank you for inviting me.
So your current research interests are political communication, digital propaganda, and alternative media and memetics. So some of your work has been presented at the most eminent international scientific conferences, such as International Association for Media and Communication Research and the annual conference of American Association for Public Opinion Research Conference. And your most recent work was on potential manipulations over public perceptions and memories of certain events through memes and meme-worthy behavior, and that has been presented at the prestigious Moscow Readings Conference at Lomonosov University. So before we go into this topic, because you apparently have a lot to say about memes and their influence in politics, I wanted to ask you, when and why did you become passionate about memes and their influence on politics and generally political discourse?
Well, the story of how I came upon the world of memetics and how I have decided to take this topic for my dissertation is rather very unusual one. I have arrived to Hong Kong back in August 2019, which was in midst of protests, which were triggered by the amendment by the Fugitive Offenders and Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters legislation amendment bill, also known as the extradition bill. The bill itself was heavily criticized, and mostly because there were concerns among some residents of Hong Kong, and mostly of those who are some sort of political opponents of the current government and to the Communistic Party of China. They would be at risk of being extradited to the mainland China. Even though the bill itself has been withdrawn in October, after a few months of massive protests, the protests did continue. So back at the time, I was staying at the student dormitory, which was located next to the main campus of my university, City University of Hong Kong. What happened? Well, in November, a few campuses and dorms got occupied by the protesters, and foreign students, including me, because I'm not born here in Serbia, we were advised to leave the rooms. So I have booked a room for a month in the Nathan Road, which is one of the main thoroughfares in Hong Kong. It's long about, I'm not sure, between 10 and 15 kilometers, let's say. And for the unexperienced young guy who has just arrived to Hong Kong from small Eastern European country, this seemed as wise decision, particularly since from the south to the north in this quite long street, there are all major points that would interest tourists. Furthermore, as one of the widest and longest roads in Hong Kong, it would be crowded with the flux of visitors, particularly in more peaceful times. But during the protests, it became some sort of battlefield for police and protesters. But back then, it wasn't that serious, particularly at the moment when I booked the room. What was also interesting for me as a researcher was that there were like endless lines of various political messages which were appearing daily in the form of graffiti running through the whole length of the concrete traffic barrier, which was in the middle of that road. That's also one of the main reasons why I decided to pick the hotel I have picked. But let's say that that month has been one of the most interesting times in my life. Mind you, but may you live in interesting times is an English expression that is claimed to be a translation of traditional Chinese curse, which was very used in the past, particularly in this region of the China. And while seemingly a blessing, this expression is normally used ironically because life is better in uninteresting times of peace and tranquility more than in interesting ones, which are usually times of trouble, right? So, man, as I said, this was the most interesting time of my life. And what happened is that in the section of the road where protesters got occupied by the group of these young people, police forces have surrounded them from the both sides and literally turned into an everyday battlefield of police and protesters. There were days when I couldn't even leave my hotel room for obviously because of my own safety. And at the one point, the food vending machines in hotel became empty. There wasn't any food in it, and I just couldn't go out and I couldn't order the food. I couldn't cancel my reservation and just leave the hotel, but partly because hotel didn't want to give any refunds, and I have already paid for a whole month in advance. So I have decided to stay there. Furthermore, as a young scholar, and particularly someone in the field of social science, I came to the conclusion that I'm in a very unique position. In a sense, I was sitting on a gold mine, and there was a lot of data that could be collected and worked with. So I would just mingle around, collect graffiti, observe, and of course, journal all my observations of interactions that were happening within protesters and police, and also within the groups of protesters themselves. So, as someone who grew up on the Balkans in the 90s, which are really dark and tough period for all of us, this didn't seem so scary to me. And was it courage, insanity, or curiosity all over three? I'm not sure, but I think that basically all the people from the Balkans, or all the people from my age from the Balkans, would probably act in a similar manner. Maybe we have it in our genes. And so what happens? At some point, I have noticed that one of the most common visual symbols which appeared in graffiti, but which was also present in other forms, was Pepe the Frog, which is also known as a sad frog meme. Um, and one morning, someone, probably some protester, yeah, it wouldn't be someone from police, who was wearing the mask of Pepe the Frog, brought us a dinner in the hotel, which seemed as kind of really unusual and surreal situation. I felt like, am I dreaming this? What the hell I'm doing in the middle of Hong Kong getting dinner from Pepe the Frog? And those who are more familiar with the world of memes and Pepe the Frog, that they know that it's actually a cartoon character which is kind of used mostly by the alternative and extreme right wing, and it became quite prominent during the elections in 2016 in the US. But Pepe the Frog character did not originally have racist or any anti-Semitic connotations. And then in this context, in context of Hong Kong protests, it means definitely something different than when we compare it to its use during the 2016 elections in the US. At the same time, there were some protests going around in Montenegro, which I was closely following. And then, it just came up to me why, when I will paraphrase the saying about the lemonade. When the life throws rocks and lemons out of you, as a PhD student, you make your dissertation out of it, right? So basically, that was the moment I had decided to immerse myself into the wonderful world of the memes.
So let's say it's such a nice story, but let's say you were lucky that you started your PhD where all these protests were going on, and then you could take advantage of it. But yeah, that's for sure inspirational story. So I would like to start our episode by actually defining the concept of memes because it's generally like quite. Let's how it's modern tool of political communication, and still a lot of people don't get it, especially generation of our parents. I still struggle sometimes to explain to my grandparents, for example, what are memes and how they function. So what are generally memes and how can they actually be as defined?
Yeah, well, that's quite interesting, because I bet that most people would be able to, at least in our generation, would be identified to a meme when they see it. They would say, okay, this is a meme. But asking someone to define what meme actually it is, it would probably be much more difficult. And the whole idea of memetics and memes is, well, let's say it's relatively young, even though they are probably old as the humanity itself. And because meme is basically an element of culture or system or behavior, which is passed from one individual to another by imitation. Like by imitation. It's the name itself. It's self-explanatory because mimesis is old Greek word for the imitation, right? So, and it can also be passed through other non-genetic memes. The term itself was coined by Richard Dawkins, who is actually a biologist, evolutionary biologist, and he argued that in a similar manner, like we have genes, but there are also these cultural genes, or let's say cultural units of information that gets passed through generations. That would be this wide concept of memes. But nowadays, and this is important to make a distinction between the two. We have internet memes, and internet memes would be like a set of different viral items which are common attributes. So there's a content, there's a stance and a form, and usually they generated with the awareness of the existence of other memes, and they're being imitated, mostly transformed during the process of circulation. And one of the most habitual traits that we can encounter in internet memes is that they feature political humor and satire. But I would like to draw to your attention that memes not necessarily need to have this humoristic aspect to them. If you look to them in this wider context that I have mentioned earlier, memes could be catchphrases. They can be verses of your favorite poem or song. They can be way of lifestyle. They can be architecture. They can be encountered in fashion, etc., etc. So to conclude, these memes are everywhere.
Yeah, they have a broad definition and broad usage. But what was for me interesting when we were preparing for this episode, and then I did some research about memes, is that actually, like, when you look at political science as a discipline that is trying to develop the best of democracy. So, like, generations of these political scientists have tried to research and explore these waves of innovative ways to strengthen this democracy and to motivate citizens to increase their participation in certain activities. But on one hand, you have like memes, where together with social media and internet, they really achieved visible change in the way how we communicate, in terms of how we send some political communications, and then change all like this political landscape. So how did this happen, and how did they become so relevant in terms of political communication, in the field of political communication?
Well, let's say that at least if we observe the political communication during the 20th century, for a large chunk of for a huge period during the 20th century, it seems that communication scholars, and not just communication scholars, like political psychologists and in general political scientists, have left unnoticed the importance of emotional aspects of politics for a very long time. However, in the past, like 3-4 decades, there has been this sort of emotional shift in social sciences, which reflects changes that have occurred outside the microcosm of academia. There's one really famous British social scientist, Barry Richards, who deals with this phenomena. And he argues that what happened is that postmodern values have eroded the boundaries between the separate spheres, so between the spheres of public life and private life. And one of, as direct consequences of that, popular culture and politics are now really strongly intervened. Furthermore, he tackles the problem of rising political cynicism and sort of disengagement in politics. The emotionalized publics can't just connect with the world of politics because they usually find it as boring. So nowadays, the politics is, in a way, it's all like this theater of performance in a way, and where the main driving forces are some of the most strong and primordial emotions, which are fear or laughter, right? Joy. So most, as I said, most citizens consider anything which is related to political life as either boring or annoying, since it's not positioned in this right emotional register. So if it's not like really scary or if it's not funny, it doesn't matter. But yet we have also to keep in mind that for certain politicians, it would probably be usable to alienate as many citizens as possible from the sphere of politics, precisely in order to seize the political power without any bigger hindrance. And in order to achieve that, they could try to manipulate with the public affects and the sentiment towards politics as well.
So when it comes to our region, when did the actually memes started being the main tool of sending certain political
I forgot also to. I would like to add something to the previous connotation. Is that if we keep in mind the satirical nature of political memes and in general their quality, that they're probably the. I would argue that they are, and research even proves that they are like the fastest fastest. Let's say that they have tendency to propagate in the fastest manner on the internet, unlike other uh, propaganda tools, because memes could be propaganda tools. And now to answer to your current question, I would argue that memes, to a certain extent, political memes have been present in our region for a really long time. In a certain way, we could probably compare internet memes or memes in general with the jokes, with the proverbs, with even epic poetry. Uh, if you ask any folklorist or someone who is interested in oral traditions, they would probably argue that these forms of communication, they all make folklore. But what what is interesting is that why folklore? Because folklore, by the definition, exists without the anchor of institutional backing, right? Other communication or cultural tool forms such as books or television broadcasts, radio shows, podcasts as well. They have like formalized organizations such as publishing houses, between them advertisers and producers. While folklore, it's being transmitted mostly through these private conversations, face to face, or inside the family, inside the group of close friends. And in that sense, memes have been present for a long time, because like we have epic poetry, we have jokes. The jokes were a really common form of political communication and some sort of social identifiers, even during the time of Yugoslavia, right? We will have these jokes which would include a lot of stereotypes based on someone's ethnicity. Except the nowadays we are running out of time, and people are living uh, with much faster pace of life. So no one has time just to sit and to discuss whether and to um, discuss about little Radoica with the gusle. I'm not sure how they say gusle in Albanian, but
I have no idea.
So what we do nowadays is we just share. We don't even. I don't know when is the last time when you told joke to someone in person. I don't recall when I told a joke to someone in person. Rather, I would just send like some sort of internet meme.
Yeah, I'm generally bad in telling jokes, but yeah, memes mostly. Yeah.
So yeah, what I'm arguing here is that due to fast pace of life, the we nowadays, instead of telling jokes, we came to memes, because language in self and human brain have been made in terms of they were the main function of language was actually um, social bonding. And as Robin Dunbar, one of the most famous evolutionary psychologists, suggests, language and its narrative structure actually mimics this social bonding and grooming by stimulating opiate production in our brains, which is elevated most likely by imposing laughter and smiling at our interlocutors. And but with the evolution, we as human beings have found a way how to effectively tell jokes through the memes. And as I said, a fair amount of informal human conversation is actually designed to make people smile. And laughter itself might play a very important role in the determination of course and dynamics of conversation. It's really all about identity.
So let's say in our region, we've been using memes before we know that we were using memes. But anyway, anyway, I just wanted to point out that memes have these two faces. On one hand, they can be really like positive and achieve some positive objectives, but on the other hand, they can be used to like either to send some disinformation or even more to strengthen some stereotypes and prejudice. So how can memes lead to actually polarization in societies, and how can they strengthen the dialogue? Are there any examples that we can see that happen?
Yeah, that is something that still has to be explored because memes themselves are also very contextual. As we could see from example of Pepe the Frog during the US elections, they were appropriated by the extreme right, but in the context of Hong Kong protests, this symbol meant something completely different and opposite of the rhetorics the radical right is using. In context of the Balkans, I would argue that they can be used as both as tool of polarization, of accelerating polarization, or also as tool of bridges of dialogue. To my mind comes really to some like really interesting situation. I don't know if you recall about Dua Lipa claiming that Ivar was dish of Albanian origin, right? And then I encountered this really interesting meme online, which there's like picture of Dua Lipa and a picture of former Yugoslavia, with each republic having attached its own brand or its own type of fiber. Because let's be honest, we all use it, we all eat it. We just made it maybe in different manners from different.
We all love Ivar, yeah.
So it was funny because it was written, and there was also written Ivars, like Ivors. It was a play of word. And what surprised me was when I was doing some sort of sentiment analysis and topic modeling of the comments below this particular meme, is that people didn't fight about it. They were actually really civilized, and they were discussing what is the actual origin of the word. And they were really polite and not hostile toward each other, which surprised me in a positive way, because usually we on Balkans, particularly unfortunately between Serbs and Albanians, sometimes there can be a heat during a discussion. And here you just see the people normally discussing, and also brought in that Ivar itself actually is from caviar. And they conclude that we don't have idea how from caviar we have Ivar. Because caviar is something completely different.
Let's hope memes and Ivar will unite the Balkan region. Anyway, we come to an end of our episode. Unfortunately, we don't have more time. But let's say the word of the day for this episode is meme, which is in Serbian meme, and in Albanian, I assume it's also meme. So word of the day for this episode is meme. I hope you enjoyed in our discussion, and listen, like, and subscribe to our Dialogue Corner YouTube channel.
for joining us for the episode of Dialogue Corner. If you liked it, make sure to visit our social media platforms at Dialogue Academy, as well as to subscribe to the show on iTunes, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, make sure to tell your friends about it and share it with your colleagues, and help us in our mission to share the values of dialogue and gender equality. You can also join the conversation by leaving a comment, since we are looking forward to hearing your opinion about this topic. Become a part of the dialogue.